Welcome, everyone, to the Summary Studio. We're your essential shortcut to, well, getting informed on some really impactful ideas shaping our world. Today, we're diving deep into a book that truly shook things up. And if you find this useful, please take just a second right now, hit like, and subscribe to the channel. It genuinely helps us bring more of these kinds of insights straight to you.
So yeah, today it's all about Robert T. Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Now, this book came out back in 1997. It's technically personal finance, self-help. It's about, what, 200 pages or so? But the impact,
Yeah.
huge. Over 40 million copies sold worldwide. That's incredible.
It really is. And the core idea, it sounds simple, but it's pretty profound. The book argues that real wealth, it isn't just about working harder at your 9 to 5. It's much more about financial education, really understanding how money works, and critically, learning how to make money work for you. That's the big shift, rather than you just working for it your whole life. That's a really powerful way to put it. And Kiyosaki makes this super relatable from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
By talking about his own childhood. He had these two dads, sort of, these father figures with completely opposite views on money. Tell us about the poor dad.
Right, the poor dad. That was his actual biological father, highly educated guy, PhD, I think.
Yeah.
And he really believed in the traditional route, get a good stable job, save your money diligently, climb that corporate ladder. It was all about the steady paycheck, job security.
Right.
That was the focus.
Okay, standard advice for many, but then there was the rich dad. Totally different story.
Totally different. This was his best friend, Mike's father, a self-made guy, an entrepreneur. And his whole philosophy was different. He was all about financial smarts, making strategic investments, and this really key idea of making your money generate more money. Passive income, basically, not just trading time for a wage.
And that contrast, that huge difference between these two influences, that's pretty much the backbone of the whole book, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's the framework he uses to explore these, competing mindsets. One path often leading towards financial struggle, the other potentially towards real freedom.
Okay, so that sets the stage perfectly. If that's the foundation, let's unpack this. Let's dive into the 6 core lessons that come out of this contrast. First up, the rich don't work for money. Now, that sounds intriguing.
Yeah, it grabs your attention, right. And here's where it gets really interesting. The core idea is that most people, the poor and the middle class, they're stuck in what Kiyosaki calls the rat race. They work hard for money, paycheck to paycheck, often. But the rich, they figured out how to flip that. They build systems, they acquire assets, so their money starts working for them.
Right. So poor dad's advice was, get that secure job, get the paycheck.
Yeah.
But Rich Dad was pushing him to learn how money actually works.
Yeah.
How to build asset, that asset column he talks about,
Yeah.
and generate income passively. It's like building your own money-making machine instead of just being a part of someone else's machine.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how this changes your motivation. Kiyosaki says the rich don't just let the fear of not having enough money paralyze them or, just make them chase a bigger salary. Instead, they use that fear, that little bit of anxiety, as fuel. It pushes them to actively look for new opportunities, to innovate, basically to create wealth, not just earn it. It's about finding solutions.
That's a subtle but really powerful shift. And for you listening, maybe the actionable thing here is to change the question you ask yourself. Kiyosaki suggests moving away from asking, okay, how much does this job pay? And start asking, what will I learn here? That focus on learning could unlock way more in the long run. And this focus on learning, on understanding systems, it leads us right into the second big lesson, the absolute importance of financial literacy. Kiyosaki nails it with the quote, "It's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep." Literacy is key to keeping it right.
Precisely. And the number one rule, the absolute bedrock of this literacy, according to Kiyosaki, is understanding the difference between assets and liabilities. Seems basic, maybe. But so many people get this wrong, even people earning good money. His definitions are super clear. An asset, that's anything that puts money in your pocket. Think income, appreciation. A liability, that's anything that takes money out of your pocket. It costs you.
Yeah, and the book gives some really clear examples to make this concrete. Assets could be things like a rental property bringing in rent each month, or stocks paying dividends, or maybe royalties from a book or music you created, stuff that generates cash flow to you. But then liabilities. These are the things that often look like assets but actually drain your cash, like the mortgage on your own home, those big interest payments.
Or a car loan, definitely credit card debt. All things pulling money away from you constantly. Right. And what's really interesting here is how people often collect liabilities thinking they're building wealth. Kiyosaki often points to the family home. Emotionally, it's huge, but financially, with the mortgage, taxes, upkeep, It often functions as a liability, at least until it's paid off and maybe generating rental income. The financially literate person, though, they are laser focused on building that asset column, the side that brings money in.
Okay, so understanding assets versus liabilities is step one. But Kiyosaki doesn't stop there, does he? He pushes us to act on it. This brings us to lesson three. Mind your own business. What exactly does he mean by that, especially if you already have a job?
Yeah, good question. He means that even if you work a regular job, say a 9 to 5, you absolutely need to focus on building your own business on the side. And by business, he primarily means your asset column. Your job pays the bills, covers your expenses maybe, but it's your assets, your own business that builds real long-term wealth and independence.
Got it. So this could be like actually starting a side hustle, something you own and control, or actively investing, say, in income-producing real estate, or maybe stocks. He also mentions things like digital products, royalties, basically ways to make money that aren't just you trading hours for dollars directly.
Exactly. And look at the contrast again. Poor dad worked for other people his whole life, building their businesses or institutions. Rich dad, he focused on building systems, businesses, assets that worked for him. Big difference in approach.
Okay, building assets, minding your own business, crucial. But Kiyosaki also talks about how the wealthy protect and even accelerate that wealth, which leads to a lesson many find a bit, well, complex maybe. Lesson four, the history of taxes and the power of corporations. How do the rich use corporations differently?
This is really fundamental to understanding how wealth works in our system. For most employees, the flow is simple. You earn money, taxes come out immediately, then you spend what's left.
Right.
But corporations, by law, they work differently. They earn revenue first, then they spend money on legitimate business expenses, salaries, supplies, rent, whatever, and only then do they pay taxes on the profit that remains. The order matters. A lot.
And Kiyosaki shows how the rich use legal structures like LLCs, limited liability companies, or other corporate forms. They use these to legally reduce their taxable income and manage their wealth more effectively. It's not just about lower tax rates sometimes, but also things like separating personal assets from business debts, offering protection. It's about knowing the rules of the game. It's definitely not about doing anything illegal, just understanding the legal system.
Absolutely. And it really brings up this key point. It's about understanding how taxes, laws, regulations actually work. And then, crucially, learning how to use those systems legally to your advantage rather than just being passively subject to them, which is what happens to most people.
That really connects to the next lesson, lesson five. The rich invent money. Now, obviously not trending in the basement, but it speaks to a certain kind of financial creativity or intelligence. What does Kiyosaki mean by inventing money?
Right, not counterfeiting. What he means is that financially intelligent people don't just sit around waiting for a job offer or for some perfect opportunity to fall into their lap. They actively go out and create opportunities to make money. It's about combining their knowledge, maybe some creativity, and importantly, a willingness to take calculated risks. They see potential where others might just see, well, nothing, or maybe just problems. They're proactive.
Can you give some examples, like what the book mentions?
Sure. It could be finding an undervalued piece of real estate that needs work but has potential, something others missed, or spotting a new tech trend or a business model really early on before everyone else jumps in, or even creating a completely new product or service to fill a need nobody else was addressing. It's about seeing value and then figuring out how to unlock it or build it.
And it's not just luck then.
No, definitely not just luck, although timing can help, of course. It's primarily about being financially educated, developing that specific kind of intelligence, that financial IQ he talks about, and being prepared, ready to act when you spot something. Recognizing value, creating value.
Okay, that makes sense. Which brings us to the final core lesson, lesson six. Work to learn, don't work for money. This kind of circles back to the first lesson, but with a twist, right? It emphasizes building a broad skill set.
Exactly. It reinforces the idea that learning is paramount. Rich Dad's advice here was really insightful. Learn a little about a lot. He contrasted this with the traditional advice to specialize deeply in just one thing, like becoming only an engineer or only a doctor. Now, specialization is valuable, obviously, but Rich Dad argued that being too specialized could limit your adaptability, your ability to see the bigger picture, and especially your ability to build your own business or manage investments effectively.
So what kind of broad skills does the book highlight as being really important?
It mentions several key ones, things like sales and marketing, understanding how to persuade and sell ideas or products. Negotiation skills, vital in almost any transaction. investing knowledge, obviously.
Hmm.
Also, communication skills, being able to express yourself clearly. And leadership, being able to organize and motivate people. These are skills that are valuable pretty much anywhere in any venture.
Right, they're transferable.
Totally. And if you think about it, these diverse skills don't just look good on a resume, they actually multiply your overall effectiveness. They make you much better equipped to start and run your own business, or even just to manage your own money and investments much more effectively. They give you versatility.
So those are the 6 big lessons, powerful stuff. But Rich Dad, Poor Dad also touched on some other concepts, didn't it? Like the cash flow quadrant. Maybe just a quick mention.
Yeah, definitely worth mentioning, although he dives much deeper in another book. But the quadrant basically puts people into 4 categories based on how they earn income. You've got E for employee, S for self-employed or a small business owner, B for big business owner, meaning you own a system, and I for investor. And the book strongly implies that the path to real financial freedom generally involves moving from the left side, E or S, to the right side, B or I, where your money is truly working for you through systems or investments.
Okay, got it. So we've covered the dads, the 6 lessons, the quadrant. If we try to pull this all together for you, the listener, what's the big takeaway?
I think it really boils down to a fundamental shift in thinking. Moving away from being just a passive participant in the economy,
Hmm.
just earning a wage towards becoming an active architect of your own financial life. And that starts with education.
Yeah, knowledge is power, quite literally here.
It really is. The book fundamentally challenges conventional wisdom about money, jobs, and wealth. It pushes for a proactive, financially literate approach, understanding assets, liabilities, taxes, corporations, all of it. There are some great quotes that capture it, like, the love of money is not the root of all evil, the lack of money is, or your future is created by what you do today, not tomorrow. But maybe the simplest, most powerful distillation is just don't work for money, make it work for you. That's the core message.
That really hits home. It puts the responsibility, but also the potential, squarely back on the individual to learn and apply these principles. It's not about blaming the system, but understanding and navigating it.
Exactly. So, maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Given everything we've talked about today from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, just consider this. How might just one small shift in your approach right now, maybe consciously deciding to acquire one small asset this month instead of, say, another liability, how might that one change repeated over time fundamentally alter your financial future? Starting today, it's definitely something to think about.
A very powerful question indeed. We really hope this deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad has sparked some thinking, maybe given you some concrete ideas for your own path. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Summary Studio. Please, if you found this valuable, hit that like button and definitely subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive. We'll catch you next time.